Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 6 waiver wire pickups for the 2024 fantasy football season. Inside of today's video, we'll be breaking down 13 players that I believe you guys should be going to the waiver wire to pick up prior to week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season. It is important to note that we have 4 teams on bye this week: the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Rams, the Miami Dolphins, and the cold like Minnesota Vikings. So if you guys have players on those teams on your fantasy football team, then you might want to pay extra close attention this week so you can fill your roster out with some of these players off the waiver wire. But before we could get into things, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below. If you are new, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 waiver wire ads for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with my number 1 waiver wire ad of the week, and that is Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Detroit Lions this week at home in Jerry's World. Now, I fully understand that running back Rico Dowdle is not going to be available in a majority of your guys' leagues, but if for some reason he is available, he is a reason why you want to run directly to the waiver wire like your name was Forrest Gump. 56% rostered on Yahoo, 29.3% on NFL, and 52.5% on ESPN. Dowdle is very clearly the running back number 1 on this team. His snaps have been increasing weekly, and he reached 50% of the snaps up against the Steelers in that riveting Sunday night football game last night, where it was as rainy as it gets, and Zeke has been playing less and less snaps as well, entering into the range where he's basically sub 30% of the snaps every single week. Rico Dowdle looked great up against the Steelers in that primetime matchup as the running back 3. Now, it is important to note that this video is recorded and will be released prior to Monday Night Football, the Chiefs versus the Saints. So if one of those running backs go crazy, they could end up surpassing Rico Dowdle or any of the running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends that we talk about in this video. And if for some reason someone was to get hurt, knock on wood, the rankings here could potentially change. So running back 3 up against the Steelers in PPR in Pittsburgh, 20 carries for 87 yards, as well as 2 receptions on 2 targets for 27 yards and a touchdown with a fumble that was recovered by the Cowboys. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give the true gawk 9,000 special to Rico Dowdle because frankly, I really just believe that he is a above average running back. I don't think that Rico Dowdle, honestly, you might even just say a average running back, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he's the second coming of Bo Jackson. He's the next Adrian Peterson, the next phenomenal running back at the NFL level, the next Breece Hall, the next Jonathan Taylor, whichever running back you want to get down on your knees for. But ultimately, volume is key in fantasy football, and Rico Dowdle is going to see a whole lot of that. He is on a team that in any given game, if kicked into high gear, they could be dropping their nuts in the mouth of the defense with 30-plus points. Rico Dowdle is the clear lead back there, so while I am not the biggest believer of his talent, I am very much a believer of the workload he will receive and love him this week in what could be a electric matchup up against the Detroit Lions. At number 2, we got another player that isn't going to be widely available, but not all of you guys play in leagues with Matthew Berry, myself, the fantasy footballers, whoever you want to give the crown to as the top fantasy football experts, right? Not everyone is in a league with the sharpest knives in the cupboard, right? Some of you guys are in a league with your coworkers, with Janice from accounting, right? So Darnell, here comes the Mooney, is the number 2 ad of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Panthers in Carolina. 48% rostered on Yahoo, 30.3% on NFL, and 69.2% on ESPN. Now, I have been someone that has kind of caught onto the Darnell Mooney hype train, and I labeled him as a start last week. Now, I definitely did not expect him to perform as well as he did on Thursday Night Football. I don't think even Darnell Mooney's family would have expected the motherfucker to be the wide receiver 3 in PPR, 9 receptions on 16 targets for 105 yards, and the kicker here, 2 touchdowns up against the Bucs in what probably is, up to this point, the best game of the season. London did get banged up last week, and that could push Mooney into being the clear wide receiver 1 on the Falcons. But my assumption here is that London plays and Mooney should be a reliable wide receiver 3/flex option going forward. And while I didn't really think he had the upside to get the 100+ yard games, to get multiple touchdowns, it is very clear that Pandora's box is open at this point, and that is possible. And with Kirk Cousins looking a whole lot better up against the Carolina Panthers, Darnell Mooney is looking mighty fine. At number 3, we got Tank Bigsby, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Chicago Bears in London. At 23% rostered on Yahoo, 3.2% on NFL, and 9.5% on ESPN. Last week, Tank Bigsby was the running back numero uno up against the Colts at home in Jacksonville. 13 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 reception on 1 target for 28 yards, and he also had a fumble that he did not end up losing. Now, Travis Etienne's snaps have been steadily dipping since week 2. And with that, with the dip of ETN snaps, we have seen the rise of Tank Bigsby's snaps, to the point where last week up against the Colts, Tank played 40% of the snaps and ETN played 38% of the snaps. Now, it is important to put things into context and not just read those snaps and then start popping a chub underneath the table thinking about Tank Bigsby being the clear workhorse running back in Jacksonville. He's stolen ETN's job. Doug Peterson confirmed that ETN suffered a shoulder injury on Sunday, and that's why he didn't play much in the second half, because they didn't want to risk it. He also emphasized in the post-game press conference that Travis Etienne is still their guy. So while I believe that Tank Bigsby might be an A1 steak sauce handcuff, I am not going to sit here and go hog wild and say, you clearly need to start Tank Bigsby this week up against the Chicago Bears, because I do not believe that is the case. At number 4, we got Tyrone Tracy, running back of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, a wet dream spot for him. 23% rostered on Yahoo, 4% rostered on NFL, and 18.4% on ESPN. Up against the Seahawks in Seattle, Tracy looked great. And I have been saying all season, I said it all summer long, that Tracy is a better running back than both Eric Gray as well as Devin Singletary. And I said that I think if Daboll has enough brain in that bald head, that he would eventually figure out that Tracy should be the lead back on the team. Now, is one game enough sample size where he gets 18 carries for 129 yards, 7.2 yards per carry, 1 reception on 2 targets for 1 yard? I am not sure if that was enough to push Brian Daboll and the team into giving Tracy the starting job, but it is definitely an important marker, as it is far from a guarantee that Singletary suits up against the Bengals. In week 5, that matchup in Seattle, Tracy played 63% of the snaps, and veteran Eric Gray only played 36% of the snaps. Now, I don't think Eric Gray is some pushover, bottom-of-the-barrel running back, but Tracy is very evidently better than him. Singletary missed last week with a groin injury after only practicing on Friday in a limited fashion. If Singletary does not return, Tracy could be a stone-cold smash up against the Bengals. If Singletary plays, then Tracy is kind of just demoted into the high upside handcuff range. At number 5, we got Trey Sermon, who spread the good word last week in Jacksonville as the running back 5 in PPR. This week, he goes toe-to-toe with the Atlanta Titans in Tennessee. 52% rostered on Yahoo, 31.9% on NFL, and 49.8% on ESPN. I was one of the fantasy analysts that was truly all over Trey Sermon last week. I was starting to, as we got closer and closer to kickoff, start getting real high on Trey Sermon. Now, I definitely didn't fucking plant my flag on Trey Sermon and tell you, I do declare that you need to start Trey Sermon in every single league. Fucking bench this guy, play Sermon. I definitely wasn't that crazy, but in the Sunday live stream, I got a lot of people onto playing Trey Sermon, and hopefully that worked out great for you, because he was the running back 5, 10 carries for 38 yards, 3.8 yards per carry, and a touchdown, 6 receptions on 6 targets for 25 yards. Jonathan Taylor missed last week with the high ankle sprain that was described as mild. High ankle sprain, mild. Don't worry about it, big fella. Don't worry at all. Jonathan Taylor's going to play, guys. And then, as I said all week, now I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but I said, hey, I don't think Jonathan Taylor's going to play. And then Jonathan Taylor, you guessed it, didn't play. So he could easily miss this game as well. High ankle sprains are no bueno for skill possession players. If you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, you need Sermon. If you're looking for a high potential upside play at running back, then you need to add Sermon, even with the clouded knowledge around Jonathan Taylor at this point. Now, Goodson did see enough snaps for it to be a little bit frustrating, as, again, Sermon is not the next Jonathan Taylor. He is far from it. Rico Dowdle is definitely way better than Trey Sermon, but Sermon played 59% of the snaps. He found the end zone. Goodson with 41% of the snaps. So again, I am not going to sit here and just praise Trey Sermon left and right, but if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, if you're down bad at running back, you definitely want him. Next up, we move to Quentin Johnston, and a lot of people dropped him because the Chargers were on bye last week. This week, they've got a tough spot up against the Denver Broncos in Mile High. 28% rostered on Yahoo, 14.9% on NFL, and 33.5% on ESPN. Prior to the bye week, he was the wide receiver 90, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. 1 reception on 5 targets for 9 yards, but he has had 3 of 4 games with 5 or more targets. And again, while I am operating under the assumption that you probably shouldn't start him up against the Buccaneers, especially because PlayStation 2 Patrick Surtain II might be locking down Quentin Johnston and throwing away the key, it is important to understand that fantasy football waiver ads aren't just based off of one matchup in a lot of scenarios, right? You're buying into the long-term potential of Quentin Johnston being Justin Herbert the pervert's quarterback number or wide receiver number 1. So I definitely think Quentin Johnston, if someone panic dropped him last week, you definitely want to scoop him up. And again, that was clearly the case because he is owned in less than 35% of leagues on all platforms. Next up, we move to Roschon Johnson, running back of the Chicago Bears, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. I'm sure the people in London just love watching the Jaguars every single year. 20% rostered on Yahoo, 2.1% on NFL, and 11.2% on ESPN. I love when they play in London because you see the crowd, and there's just a gazillion people wearing Blake Bortles jersey, and we all love the boat Blake Bortles over here on the channel. But before we break down Roschon and the rest of the waiver wire ads, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog Fantasy. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious, you'll be able to claim your free pick, which tonight on Monday Night Football is Patrick Mahomes higher than half a total yard. You match that with any of the players on the Saints or any of the players playing on Thursday Night Football in Week 6, Sunday night game, Monday night game, and you will be able to get 3 times what you put into your pick'em. If you put in multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Nick, I'm watching this on Tuesday. Mahomes already played. Now what happens if I use promo code Notorious? If you use promo code Notorious, you'll receive a pick very similar to this. It'll just be a different player, higher than half of a total yard. Plus, you'll receive a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So make sure you sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description or the pinned comment to get that free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So Roschon Johnson, prior to week 4, everything was pointing to Roschon Johnson's season, right? Oh, Swift is getting kicked in the behind, right? They're going to start playing Roschon Johnson as the guy. It's Roschon Johnson season. But that has clearly been thrown out the window, right? DeAndre Swift playing 63+% of the snaps in back-to-back games. So Johnson is now in a scenario where he basically gets all of the goal line touches. And if you're down bad, he's start worthy because the Bears offense continues to look better and better. But until Johnson takes on more of the load, until he takes on more of the amount of snaps, then he's really just kind of a handcuff that if you're really down bad, you can start. Last week up against the Panthers, he was the running back 15 because he got 10 touches for 25 yards, but he scored 2 touchdowns. Again, he is the goal line back. And if Caleb continues to look impeccable like Sydney Sweeney's Tatas, then Roschon Johnson could end up falling ass backwards into the end zone for you, maybe even a couple of times up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in a coveted matchup in London. At number 8, we got Braelon Allen, running back of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. 47% rostered on Yahoo, 25.1% on NFL, and 41.9% on ESPN. Interesting tidbit of information that I saw on Twitter today. The Jets, through the first 5 games of the season, have the exact same point total on offense as they did last year with Zach Wilson. So that really makes you think just how good Aaron Rodgers is. Now, I'm not going to sit here and dig a grave for Aaron Rodgers, this, that, or the other thing. I'm not going to completely shit on the Jets, even though as a Dolphins fan, me do not like the Jets. But just interesting tidbit of information. Braelon Allen still rostered in a bunch of leagues, 47% on Yahoo, 25.1% on NFL, 41.9% on ESPN. But I think a lot of people are going to start cutting ties soon because they're tired of what the Jets offense has looked like over the last couple of games. In London, week 5 up against the Vikings, 5 carries for 13 yards, 1 reception on 2 targets for 15 yards. Brees is clearly the workhorse running back on this team, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He played 69. Brees Hall is playing 69+% of the snaps weekly, and most weeks he's over 74, 75+% of the snaps. Now, assuming the Jets figure things out, assuming they shake it off like that Taylor Swift song, then in more positive game scripts, we are going to see Braelon Allen fall into the end zone. Braelon Allen gets some drives on his own. He is the guy they like using on the goal line. But until the offense fixes itself and they stop looking so limp dick, then I really don't want to be starting him. Next up, we move to waiver wire ad number 9, and that is Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders, going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. 31% roster on Yahoo, 35.8% on NFL, 48.3% on ESPN. And speaking of the Ravens, they've been throwing the ball to the wrong tight end. You think, oh my God, is that Andrews? And then it's some fucking fat bastard white dude that you've never heard of who ends up getting 1 million targets on the team. Or it's Isaiah Likely, and you are kind of just left out to dry, but we're not going to sit here berating Mark Andrews. That's what the tight end video is for. We're going to be talking about it in great length in this tight end start sit video coming up this week. Again, make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel. So Ertz, tight end 34 last week up against the Browns. 2 receptions for 10 yards, but he did have 8 targets, which was the highest amount of targets he has seen all season, and he is normally a 4 to 5 target guy weekly who's good for about 10 points. Again, Zach Ertz has reached Unk status, like his name was Shannon Sharp, right? He's not the same Zach Ertz he was a couple of years ago, but he's fine. And he's on an offense that scores a shit ton of points. Next up, we move to Cade Otton, another tight end of the Bucs, going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. 37% rostered on Yahoo, 20.2% on NFL, and 16.7% on ESPN. Tight end 20 last week in PPR at Atlanta. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 44 yards. He didn't really have that fun of a time, considering the rest of the players in this game were absolutely fucking feasting. His targets have increased, though, recently, with just 2 in both of the first 2 games, so 2 and then 2, and then followed by 8, 9, and 4. The Buccaneers offense is so good that does elevate Otton into being start worthy due to him potentially being able to score a touchdown due to how much they get into the red zone. Again, he's not a high-end option by any means, but if Baker is able to continue to play at this high of a level, there are certainly going to be games where Cade Otton ends up exploding, and in a positive way. At number 11, we got Danny Dimes, quarterback of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Bengals. 9% roster on Yahoo, 1.3% on NFL, and 13.9% on ESPN. So if your quarterback is on one of the teams that's on bye, if your quarterback situation is as suspect as it gets, then Daniel Jones will be your answer this week. Quarterback 10 last week up against Seattle in Seattle, which was surprising in my opinion, especially when you consider the fact that Malik Neighbors wasn't playing. 23 completions on 34 attempts for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 11 rushes for 38 yards. So Daniel Jones has been better than I and most people have given him credit for. He has scored over 18 points in 3 of 5 games, and the Bengals defense is straight up cheeks. Shout out to Cardi B. So Jones should be at minimum a high-end quarterback too this week. Again, the Bengals defense is just so putrid. For the Bengals to win games, they really need to score like 36, 38, 40 fucking points because that defense has more holes than Swiss cheese. At number 12, we got Jalen Tolbert of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Lions. He scored the game-winning touchdown last week up against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football in a game that ended at, 1 in the fucking morning? That's at least what it felt like. I had to keep my eyes open because that was I said it in the waiver wire, or I said it in the defenses to stream video. Make sure you guys check that out if you haven't seen it already. But that was simultaneously the worst football game I have watched in a while, while also being one of the most entertaining games because it really came down to the wire, through the wire, like that Kanye West song. 7% rostered on Yahoo, 1.4% on NFL, and 7.6% on ESPN. He was the wide receiver 12 in that game in Pittsburgh, in formerly Heinz Field. Now they have a new name, but we ain't going to call it by the new name. 7 receptions on 10 targets for 87 yards and a tug. No Brandon Cooks for the next couple of weeks due to Cooks' injury and because he apparently has an infection. And anytime, again, I'm as much of a doctor as one of the dudes you see on the hub or the other tube, but anytime you hear infection, it just doesn't sound great. Like, Brandon Cooks being hurt when he's this fucking old it just sucks for him, right? Because I do like Brandon Cooks, and he's always been a guy that has been very underrated in the NFL, but I'm not here to sit here and fucking suck off Brandon Cooks dry. So we're going to be talking about Tolbert here. I do believe that Tolbert is far from a safe play. His targets have been all over the place. But up against Detroit in what I believe is going to be a shootout, and what I believe is going to be a high-scoring game, I am very, very interested in Jalen Tolbert in this spot. At number 13, we got Josh Downs. He's the final waiver wire ad of the week. If you have questions about any other players, let me know down below in the comment section. I do love to help you guys out with that. So, Josh Downs. Nick, why is Josh Downs not higher? Josh Downs would be really, 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 really good. It's very simple. If Joe Flacco is under center, we are going to be excited to start Josh Downs. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Dua Lipa. I'm trying to do more with her than do a feature. Shout out Jack Harlow as well. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the team, continues to make his stance, which makes sense. Anthony Richardson, AR, is their quarterback as soon as he is healthy. So right now, it being Monday, or maybe you're putting the waivers on Tuesday, if it seems like AR is going to end up playing, then what is really the value of Downs? Now, maybe you might be like, Nick, Josh Downs is better than Michael Pittman Jr. Go ahead and say that. I don't think that's a crazy fucking thing to say. But if the offense is in the hands of Anthony Richardson, they're not going to throw the ball as much, and Josh Downs is going to be very, very unreliable. You could still start him. You could say, fuck it, I'm playing Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs is a great player. Josh Downs, go Burr. Josh Downs is a very great player. He's going to get it done even in the shitty situation. Go ahead. But the risk is tenfold in that scenario. He's rostered in 40% of leagues on Yahoo, 14.3% on NFL, and 34.9% on ESPN. He was the wide receiver 15 last week in Jacksonville in PPR, 9 receptions on 12 targets for 69 yards. Very nice. I like. My name is Borat. I have a chair. So I love Josh Downs, the player, but I don't love the situation because the second Anthony Richardson comes back, then Josh Downs is basically fucked. There's really no easier way to say it than he's just fucked with Anthony Richardson. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And whether you are new to the channel or not, you'll leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Again, important to note that there are a bunch of teams on bye: the Kansas City Chiefs, the LA Rams, the cold like Minnesota Vikings, and the Miami Dolphins. It is also important to note that this video was brought to you guys by Underdog, so make sure you guys check them out. If you are new, promo code Notorious to claim your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Tonight, get Patrick Mahomes higher than half of a total yard. I love you guys all more than you will ever know. We just hit 37,000 subscribers, which is crazy because if you asked Dick, who was in college, making these videos when I started all those years ago, I would never have believed we would have gotten this far. So, it means everything to me. I love you guys all so much. I do hope you guys have a great one. Make sure you guys come back tomorrow for the running back, wide receiver start sit, and check out the defense to stream video if you haven't seen it already. Love you guys so much. Have a great one. As always, good boy.